Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and I want to show you how you can install the MST turbo intakes into your BMW S55 motor. All right, y'all, so let's talk about this project a little bit before we do it, because it's going to be a little bit different than normal. This is going to be kind of an off-label install. So when I was looking around for intake videos or DIY videos for turbo intakes, I actually didn't find anything at all, which is what convinced me to go ahead and do this video today, even though I'm going to be doing it a little bit differently, and I want to call that out from the very get-go. I found zero DIY videos for turbo intakes for the S55. Now, the work itself isn't all that hard, and I thought about just doing it myself and not doing a video on it, but I thought something is better than nothing. Now, why is this going to be different? Well, I have the amazing Musselman turbo upgrade here in my S55 now, and all that additional power and all those changes. Now, the MST intakes are primarily intended for OEM turbos. Now, they do talk about how with an adapter they can fit some aftermarket upgrade turbos. Now, in talking with Brian of Keys Motorsports, which is where I got these intakes from, that sometimes the back intake doesn't fit quite right. The angles are slightly off with the Musselman turbos, because Brian has his car also running the Musselman turbos on his amazing 1,000 horsepower Big Red. And so in his case, he just installed the front intake, and I'm going to do exactly the same. So I'm actually going to only show installing the front intake today, because I figure, again, something is better than nothing. Now, when I get the intake pipe out, and I'm going to show you the differences in pipe sizes, and it really is huge. The difference is tremendous. So as I look to upgrade my tune and get my car all dialed in just perfectly, and I'm way over stock horsepower, more air is better. Even one intake pipe upgraded is better than none. And it gets away from some of those choke points in the OEM pipes. So with all of that, that's why we're going to be doing this a little bit differently today. Now, this isn't Musselman's fault. This isn't MST's fault. They look at it and say, you know, they can't be compatible with everything. And I completely understand that, which is why we're doing this a little off-label today, and we're only going to be doing the front intake. So with all of that said, I hope that makes sense on why I'm only showing half the job today. If I come up with a solution for the back half, I'll make sure to share that, or I'll redo this video, but I'll make sure to let you know. But today, we're only going to be installing the front. All right, so with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into the car. Let's get started. All right, let me freehand the install here really quick. So I actually just kind of wanted to show off. I've got new fender guards. You know, you can get these from just about everywhere, but you know what, I really love Keys, so I went ahead and got a set from Keys, which is really nice and helps keep you from scraping up your paint. Okay, so one of the very first things we're going to do is we're going to undo the 10 millimeters, 1, 2, 3, they're quarter turns across the top, pull out the plastic ribbon on each corner, and you're going to do that on both sides. Once that's out, the bolts here are going to be exposed in the rear, but also here in the front. And you have these two in the front that are shorter, and then you'll have 2 or 3 in the back, and I'll show you those in just a sec. But go ahead and get your plastic covers off, because we need to take the carbon strut bar off. We're going to take the air intake out on both front and rear to get enough space, because the intake pipe we want to change is all the way down in there. Now, in my case, I'm probably going to have to move my oil catch can as well, but we'll address that in just a second. So, then take your plastic covers off, then we're going to take the strut bar off next. All right, y'all, so now you have your plastic covers off, you can go ahead and take the 13 millimeter bolts that are holding down your carbon strut bar. I usually will take a plastic glove and I will cover my positive battery post, so when we pull this out, I don't touch it or have issues there as well. Now, so you've got the 13 millimeter, 2 or 3 at the top, the 2 at the bottom, which are shorter. Make sure that you don't lose track of those. And then you have one 10 millimeter bolt right here that holds the reservoir to the strut bar itself. So go ahead and take this 10 millimeter bolt out, and then your bar is free. Now you can get it out quite simply by lifting on this side and sliding it out through the other side, set it safely aside. And then while we're here, we might as well take our vanity cover off as well, because it's probably not going to be in the way, but we're going to give ourselves a little bit more room. So we can take this off. We'll take our carbon strut bar off. Now, in my case, I'm also very likely going to be moving or removing my oil catch can, but we'll deal with that in just a second. Right, so now that the strut bar is off, we can start to look to take our intake pipes out. There's a couple of things you're going to want to do. So first of all, you have your MAF sensor right here that has a little locking tab. You just press down on that and lock it back. You also have your intake pipe here that goes up to your charge cooler. You can just take it up and out of the clips. And then underneath that right here is a vacuum hose that comes up with a little squeeze connector on either side. All you have to do is just squeeze that and lock it back, and then it's free. So now the only thing that's really holding this in place are some rubber grommets and then your hose clamp right here. So while you're at it, you can loosen the hose clamp on this side and also on the other side as well. And all we really want to do is gain as much room as we can so we can get our hands in to get the intake pipe. Because the pipe that we're going to be removing is, you can see the top of it right here. It's where your air intake feeds into the turbo, and we're going to increase the diameter of that really significantly as it goes down into the new turbos. Okay, so with all of that loose, you can take your air box and just work it up. As you can see, it just works its way up and out, and then just walk it off the pipe, just like that. So go ahead and take this, set it safely aside. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take off the air box on the other side as well, just so I have the maximum amount of room, be able, not only for camera angle, but to be able to get my hands down into the end of that pipe. Because when it really comes down to it, that intake pipe is only held on a couple of posts, but you have to be able to get to them. Okay, so you just want to make sure to loosen your hose clamp, which I haven't done here yet. You pull off your MAF sensor right there. The same way, you just depress the little tab, and then it'll come off. Okay, and you can use a screwdriver or a socket on these little worm drive hose clamps. Okay, so once you have that, word of caution. This intake pipe actually connects right here to a post that goes in, and I've broken that before. So when you pull this apart, be gentle about it and don't apply a massive amount of pressure to this pipe, because you can break it off that bracket. Okay, so once you have it walked backwards, all you have to do is just work and get it up off its feet, which is hung up just a little bit on one of those feet right there. But as you can see, it'll start to work out. Now, I am going to go ahead and moving my oil catch can just to get it up and out of the way. If you don't have that, obviously you can skip past this point, because now we're going to be looking at the bottom of the pipe here. But go ahead and get your air box out, and then I'm going to move my catch can. Okay, so now that the air box is out, let's go ahead and take a look at, the job here. So you can see the top of the pipe. This is the pipe that we're going to be taking out. It comes down, snakes back behind all of that. You've got your breather hose that connects to it right here, and then it comes down and it connects to your turbo down there, which I'll get a closer look at for you here in just a second. But what we want to focus on is the breather hose, and in this case, my catch can. Now, if you don't have a catch can, you're going to have a breather hose that comes straight up from there and straight in here. So, and you're going to need to disconnect that. That's a T20 bolt down there at the bottom. Now, also very, very hard to show because you can just barely see it. There's actually a plug at the bottom of this right here that plugs up through this little bracket. So you have to reach down with a pick, undo the little lever, and push the plug off, because this is not going to come out. Even when you take the bolt out, this is not going to come out until you get that plug out. Okay, so now my catch can is a little bit different. So if you don't have one, the direction is going to be a little bit modified. In my case, I'm going to unhook the hose. So take the T20 out, unplug it, and then pull it out. I'm also going to undo the bracket so I can pick this up and lift it up and out of the way and get a cleaner view of the intake pipe as well, because there's basically two posts that come off the top of the turbo and with two nuts. The intake pipe fits over those posts and then is screwed into place. Okay, but let's go ahead and get this out of the way first. Take out that T20, back that plug off, and then this hose will be free. If you have just it up to the crankcase, that's all you need to do. You don't need to undo it at the crankcase. You can just unplug the hose and let it hang there. All right, so here's what the end of the hose looks like, whether you've got the OEM or this aftermarket with my Nishimoto catch can. Okay, so you can see where the screw went in, and you can see this is where that sensor plugs in. So you're just pulling that off to get this out. And I've gone ahead and pulled the whole thing out. So let me grab my camera. We can get a little bit of a closer look. I want to show you that bracket, kind of where that cable plugs in, just so you have a clear idea. Because once you get a look at it, it's not all that hard. All right, so now that that's off, you got a clean look of what's going on. So here's the bottom of your intake pipe with this little bracket that this cable comes through. You can see the end of the plug right here, right? But as we look down in here, and I'm going to point with my screwdriver because I can see it very, very clearly, right there, you should see a nut. It's right there. And there's another one just like it on top. It's a little hard to see right now, but there's a matching one right there on top as well, which we can see if we get really low and look under there. You can see where that nut is, and that's the only two things that hold this entire intake pipe on right here. It comes down behind all of this, tucks into the top of your turbos with those two nuts holding it in place. So the challenge now, or what you need to do now, is go ahead and get a good angle down to those two nuts to take them off. So let me get the right tool, and I'll show you how that's going to work. All right, so I want to show you kind of a strange angle, because this is one of those things where I can see the nut. It's a 10 millimeter nut on that top post, but I just cannot find a camera angle. So if you notice, I've actually got my wrench on it right here. So I've got a closed ratcheting wrench. It's 10 millimeter. I got it over the nut and ratcheted the wrench a couple of times, and the nut is actually free. It's not off yet, but it's actually free, and it's just, you just can't quite see it from this angle. It's at the very end of the wrench right there. So I wanted to show you the wrench because it's easy to see, but it's very hard to film. So I have it lit up the best I can. So I have my wrench on it right there and should be able to get that nut out without any problems, just backing it off the post. And then you'll see beyond the wrench right there, you can see down. You can see that lower 10 millimeter as well, which is easier to get to. So I wanted to tackle the hardest one first because it's the hardest to see. Now, the other key in all of this is not dropping it, because that would suck. Now, it'll drop down in your belly pan, but then you'd have to get your stiffening plate off and fish that thing out, or have a magnet. So just be careful as you get it off. All right, so really quickly, here's a quick thing. So here's my ratcheting wrench, right? So ratchets, which is really nice. So I was able to get it in there, get it over the top of the post, and then break this nut free. Now, once it's so loose that the ratchet really doesn't work much anymore, right? And you can potentially back it off and drop it. Now, here's one little trick that I did. I've got a magnetic wand. I could reach the magnetic wand in and touch the nut itself, okay? Then, all I did was just run my wand around the nut itself, and I actually slowly spun the nut off the post using my magnet. Also, but when it finally popped free, it was stuck straight to the magnet. So I didn't have to worry about dropping it. So, all right, so as we look down in here, you can see the black of the intake pipe, and we look down past this, you can see the lower post right there, all the way down. So all you're gonna have to do is take your wrench again and break that free. And I'm probably gonna do the same magnet trick where I'm slowly going to spin that nut using my magnet on the wand so it comes off and I also don't drop it. Okay, but go ahead and just take your wrench, fit it all the way down in there, and I don't have it probably not at the right angle right now, but go ahead and just fit it all the way down onto it right there, and go ahead and break that free, and then go ahead and back that nut off. Okay? All right, so if you look way back down in there, you should see that it's off the post, and actually the pipe is almost off entirely, and you'll see it'll start to wiggle free the intake. Now, there's one more thing we need to do. If you notice right here, you've got a 10 millimeter bolt that secures this flange that's on the pipe itself. So go ahead and take that bolt out. Once you get that bolt out, and you can use a socket or a wrench, then this pipe will just wiggle out, and you wiggle it up and out, and we'll compare it against the new one. All right, now that the original is out, you can see just the tremendous difference here. So this goes from about 3.5 inches to about 1 3/4. So it necks down almost 50% as it gets down to the turbo. So it's kind of crazy when you think about the amount of air and the airflow that's coming in from your air box here on the top. Now, when you look at the new one, so it's this heavy duty silicone, which is going to be a little bit easier and flexible to get in. You're looking at about 3.5-ish here up at the top, but you're actually looking at about 2.5 here at the bottom. So you're getting an entire 1/2 inch of diameter, which is really, truly tremendous. Now, there's also a bracket that we're going to fit on the ends of all of these here in a second, but I really wanted to show the comparison difference in just hose diameter of when we put this into place. So now let's take a look at the top of the front turbo where this connects and the bracket we're going to put into place. Okay, so now that the pipe is out, you can see in here very, very easily. You can see both posts right here and here. You can see the top of your turbo right here. You can see that cable that goes in for your breather hose and how all of this connects. So one of the things we want to look at is that there is a mounting bracket that this is going to go on. And there's a couple of different ways to do this. You can either put this onto the hose itself, get it in the right orientation, feed it down, and then bolt it into place. And then there's going to be a hose clamp that secures this here at the hose. Or, to make it easier to get the nuts back on, and I'm going to point out this gasket a couple of times, the kit comes with 2 different gaskets, a thinner one, which is the back one, and a thicker one, which is here, the front one. You can see because it fits into the groove for the gasket perfectly.
I'm actually going to fit this into place first, and actually, so I can get those nuts on very, very cleanly. So if I can reach in here, if I can do this with one hand right at the moment, you can see where this is just going to come in here and fit right over the top of those posts really easily. So I have it slightly at an angle. But there you go. So now that's in place very easily, just like that. So you can see where it fits onto this post. And now I can get a socket wrench and put those 10mm nuts back on very, very easily here without the pipe in place. Sorry for the light in the way. Then what we can do is feed this down in with the hose clamp loose, because we'll be able to get to the hose clamp from this side and we'll be able to drive and tighten that hose clamp. So I'm going to get the bracket on first, so go ahead and take a short extension and a 10mm socket and snug those bolts back up. Now remember, don't crank on just one side completely tight and then the other side completely tight, because it might be a little off center with that gasket. So do one side just snug, and then the other side tighten it up kind of sequentially until both sides are tight. Okay, so go ahead and get that mounting bracket on, and then we'll get the pipe in place. All right, so you should be able to see right here, the bracket is now back in place right there. I've got both nuts down and snug. Sorry for the light right there in the camera. So both of these nuts are on here and here, and I kind of snug them down sequentially until they're on completely firmly. As you can tell, the bracket is on completely firmly now. So what we're going to want to do is take this, and I've taken the medium hose clamp. So this kit comes with a whole series of hose clamps. There's a small one for this, there's a big one for that, a medium size for this. What we want to do is position the worm drive in a place where we're going to be able to get to it with a wrench. And this is going to be an 8mm here in just a few minutes. So I've just kind of pulled it back up the pipe here. And then we just take the pipe and just work it down, and work it down and down and down and down and down. And I'm going to work it past all of the rest of the hoses, as I'm failing to do this with one hand. But we're going to work it down past all of this, underneath both of these. Now, don't pin. This is for your sensor here, right, on your crankcase breather hose, right? So don't pin this cable down or down underneath. Get it underneath the cable here for the top of the turbo and fit it down here onto this bracket. Now, the other thing you could always do is just take a little bit of oil or a little bit of lubricant and just put a little bit of a coating here on the neck of the bracket to help this slide into place, and just work it down until it's slid in securely and firmly all the way around. This way we can also position this, because it's going to rotate on that bracket, we can position it in exactly the right location once we have it on that bracket. Once that's the case, we'll just take and we'll maneuver the hose clamp into the right location where we can get a socket on it, and then we'll tighten it down and it'll be perfect. Okay, so looking in there, you can see that the pipe is in place. Let me get my hand in the way here for a second. Pipe is fit down into place over the bracket, and the hose clamp is right here with the worm drive faced up, where I can get to it very easily with an 8mm socket or a long screwdriver. I'm going to use a socket on a wobble so I can just be off that angle just a little bit. So the big key here is just patience, right? So you just put a little bit of oil on the silicone on the hose so it slides in. And because you've got to come down and in at this angle, you have to just be patient and work it so it gets in flush. And I really want to make sure that the top of this hose is meeting the top of the bracket right here, and it is smooth all the way around. Now, you can see about the top third or so you can eyeball the top. You can get your hand around the other side to make sure it fits. If you have small hands, you can get a hand a little bit underneath to make sure that it's even all the way around. I also, at one point, had my hand inside the pipe so I could get a good grip on it and press it down into place. Okay, once I was confident that that was in place, my hose clamp, which was loose and up the pipe right here, I just slid it down. And again, just be patient. You want to make sure that it's even all the way around and on the inside of the lip that is on that mounting bracket, right? So you don't want it all the way up against the metal. You want it even, make sure it's even all the way around. And then, like I said, you can use a long screwdriver, which will fit just fine right there, and I can tighten it. Or I can use a 8mm socket on a long extension, which is what I'm going to do so I can have a lighter touch than the screwdriver. But with all of that in place, then your hose is in place. And in some ways, this is almost easier than the OEM pipe, since you can put those nuts on that bracket on separately by itself. Okay, we can see the top of the pipe here and our connection for the breather hose, which we'll take care of in just a second. But go ahead and tighten that worm drive down. Make sure you have a good connection there before you move on. All right, so now that that's in and good to go, you can install the bracket for your breather hose. Now make sure to put the hose clamp on first loose back here behind before you put this in. Okay, so put the small one on, and again, make sure that the worm drive is in a place where you can easily get to it. But I'm going to put it in, again, loosely to start, so I can turn this in whatever orientation that really fits my hoses best. And that's the nice thing about this, is that you can actually customize kind of the angle that this sits at. Okay, now the other thing that you're going to want to double check on is make sure that your cable, right, for the bottom of your breather hose is still exactly where you can get to it. You don't have to worry about feeding it through that bracket anymore or any strangeness like that. But go ahead and put the hose clamp on loosely, then go ahead and fit this on. Now I'm going to fit my oil can back on, but what you would do is if you had just the breather hose, you'd clip it back up here to the manifold, or to the top of the motor, and bring it down and around and make sure that it's at the right angle, which allows you to turn this to find the correct orientation to put that bolt in. Now you also have a new 3mm Allen bolt that's going to go here. You're not going to reuse the T20 because that was metal into plastic. This is metal into metal. So make sure to use the new bolt, orient it around. Now let me get my catch can. I'll show you that a little bit. Again, it's going to be a little bit different. If you don't have a catch can, I highly recommend that you do, by the way. Make sure to check out my Mishimoto install for that catch can. It's definitely worth it. All right, so let's do a quick double check before I put the airbox back on, and we're really just in the reassembly phase. So I've gone ahead and secured my oil catch can. Now, if you have a catch can, what I've done is I've made a couple of minor adjustments. So obviously I've put the main breather hose back on, and it's up into place. I secured the can because it was moving around too much with me as I was trying to install the hose. So I secured it in place as well. Now, this is the one nice thing where, again, you can manipulate where that flange sits. You can turn it and rotate it. So what I had to do was rotate the whole thing a little bit towards the motor, because the cable that comes around and plugs into the bottom of this was about this much too short. when this connector was kind of sitting at what would be the 6 o'clock position, right? If you're looking at a clock face, so here's 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down to the bottom. Now it's sitting at about an 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock position, and the cable, it fits just fine. So it's all connected in really, really nicely. Now, we have changed the angles here on a little bit between the hose and the catch can and the like, and this particular hose has a little bit of an extra bend to it now than it had before. But again, we've changed the position of how this all fits. And these are aftermarket parts on aftermarket parts. So you may end up having to customize it a little bit. I'm going to keep an eye on this hose, and if I need to change it, either get my own hose that's got a stronger U bend in it already, or maybe even cut off a little bit to make it fit. But for now, it's not kinking the hose at all. I don't feel like there's any restriction, and it's just got a little bit of a healthier U shape to it. Okay, so we have all the connections at the bottom are in. The hose clamp here is now tight to hold this all into place. Our 3mm Allen is in. All of our hose clamps are tight. I loosened the hose clamp here briefly so I could rotate this hose more, and I've tightened it back down. Everything else is back in and really, really good. Okay, so now all we need to do is put the air boxes and the vanity cover and the strut bar back on. But let's start with the air box on this side, because it's the one that's going to be changed a little bit from the OEM setup with this hose here. And find your big hose clamp, and let's get it installed. All right, so to fit your airbox into place, it's easy. Just set it back down into place, and there's rubber feet on this side. It's a little hard to see on camera, but if you look down here, you can see where your duct for your fresh air comes in, and there's a neck on the airbox that goes around that to make sure that you've got a good seal there as well. So now this is all sitting in place. It's not connected, obviously, at our new hose here, but you can take your MAF sensor, you can plug it back in. You want to press it till there's a good click. You take your vacuum hose and go ahead and put that back on, and it should click as well as it goes back into place. So now all that's set. Now with all of this, what we're going to need to do is just get your new hose connected. As you can tell, they're not connected right at the moment, but it's just going to take a little bit of manipulation and moving and getting it all to fit back into place. Now the other thing I've done is they've provided a large hose clamp. It's a new one, it's wider than the OEM. So I'm also going to get that moved up into a place where it's easy to get to, and I can get to the worm drive to tighten it down. Okay, so take all of this, move it all in together, get a good connection between these two, and then go ahead and tighten down your hose clamp, and then we'll double check all of our fittings in just a second. So the front airbox is done. I got a light here so you can see that fresh air intake right there and how it necks down over the top of it. All of our rubber feet are in, which is really nice. Our MAP sensor's plugged back in. Our vacuum hose is plugged back in, and then you can take your coolant line and put it back into the clips right there. So all done as far as the new pipe is concerned. All you need to do is now just put your other airbox back on. So when you look down in here, let me take my light out of the way. All you want to do is take the airbox and set it down because it needs to go back on these same feet, and it really just needs to go straight down, and it goes straight over the top of that same fresh air intake right here. What I'll usually do is compress this back with one hand and press the box in with the other, then neck this into place, and then go ahead and tighten up your hose clamp and put your MAF sensor back on. So let's get that done, and then I'll show you about putting your carbon strut bar back on. All right, so you can put your vanity cover back on now. If you haven't done that before, it just simply goes back on the posts, fits around your oil cap. You can fit it back down on those feet just like that. Okay, and then your carbon strut bar, what I usually will do is I will fit it through on the driver's side just like that, and then I'll lay it down on the passenger side. You lift this rubber grommet and just get it roughly lined up into place. Make sure to take your grommet, fit it back around nicely just like that. And then you'll see it lines up with all of the holes. Now, the torque values you'll need are going to be listed in the description of the video. Just like all of the parts and everything you need to do this job will be listed there, including the links for the products. So make sure to check that there. But put the long bolts in back, short bolts in front. Torque values will be in the video description. Put all those back in. Don't forget your 10mm over here for the reservoir. Then we'll put our plastics back on and we're almost done. All right, so now that the strut bar is back on, go ahead and take the glove off your positive battery post. Your engine plastics is fit back into these little fingers here in the center. So just make sure that they line up, so that way they stay down and don't flap around like that. Okay, and then just feed it down into place. Don't forget your little plastic rivets that go in the corners, just like that on both sides. That fits in, and then you've got quarter turn, 10mm just here at the top again, where you just turn them back the other direction. Quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, and then they'll be all in place. So all that's done, and everything's all put together. So go ahead and fire your car up and test. All right, guys, all wrapped up, go ahead and clean up, put your tools away, all done. This really is a simple project and something you can do easily here at home. Thank you so much to Keys Motorsports. That's where I got this kit, and so the link for that will be listed in the video description below. Obviously running a little bit off label today, only installing the front pipe, but with my new Musselman turbos, I figure a little more air is better than none at all. If I do figure out a way to get the back pipe to work, I'll bring that back to you for sure. I'll probably do a separate video on it. But for now, I'm just glad to have this in and have it feeding those turbos even just a little bit more. Thank you so much to MST for making a fantastic product. I really like having this in my car as my build on my M2C is coming together. Please click subscribe and the little alarm bell. It makes a huge difference to my channel. I would really appreciate it. And I have a ton of content coming this year. I am so excited to bring to you, and you never know what's next. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on my next project.